decide that, or have you landed on that yet? Because you switched a few different times, haven't you, from what you originally thought to then it kept growing and evolving as you grew and evolved.
I'm still open to the guidance that comes through, and I'm realizing through a lot of just sitting with silence that things are allowed to change and shift as they need to. So I'm not too attached to one thing at the current moment. But what I have found that I really connect with is nervous system regulation and self-empowerment. Like you said, it all starts here. We can only really meet people as deeply as we've met ourselves. And I think it's scary. It's scary as hell to meet ourselves, our shadows, and the things that maybe we're, not consciously aware that we still need to work through. But I work with women specifically. I do know that I really resonate with we mostly work with women on transforming trauma, whatever that is. For me, it's perfectionism. It's this deep seat. And I was not consciously fully aware that I was a perfectionist until after this program because it kept coming up. And I was like, no, that's not me. No. And then I like looked at the list of symptoms over here and I'm like, oh, oh, okay. So I would say that I help women who want to learn how to regulate their nervous systems to be able to contain that beautiful energy of healing that wants to come through. Because if it doesn't feel safe to contain, we won't allow ourselves to hold it. It becomes unavailable. So that's really where I'm going with group coaching program. That's what I would like to move towards to help more women. And I think it's just incredible to have other people support you on your journey, because sometimes we have this mental concept of like, am I the only one? Like I'm the only one that's dealing with this. And it's just not true. It's
Yeah.
just not true. And to be able to hold that space and share it with others is, I mean, it's invaluable. You have to have it. Things we weren't meant to be alone. We're not meant to be alone as human beings. We're meant to help one another through the journey. So as far as where I've landed right now, it's on focusing on healing the nervous system. That's really what I feel resonated with at this time.
And just so you guys who are listening know, like healing the nervous system is actually what ends up creating the body, because the chakra system projects itself through the nerves as it flows out, right? All the different energy fields literally are pumped out through the nervous system. So if your nervous system isn't working, you're all constantly in fight, flight, freeze instead of rest, repair, renew, right? Which is why there's such I would say almost like a viral movement around the nervous system right now. People are tapping into the fact that working with it helps heal the whole body at once, right?
Mhm.
So it's a very, very powerful space to be guided to focus and work inside the body. Um, it's a very, very powerful space, and it's positively electric. Really happily. So what would you say was the greatest learning that you took away from the course?
God, that's such a hard question. There's so many things. I think the key for me is really working on clearing those bits that keeps me from trusting myself and my intuition and guidance. There's some of you who are watching this right now who are asking yourselves, am I really intuitive? You're looking for the manual of like step 1, step 2, step 3. This is how I become intuitive. But the reality is you already are, right? And we have to work through the layers of the gaslighting from ourselves, our community, so on, to help us unlock and unleash that. And for me, that's been the biggest key, is learning how to be in silence and open to my guidance. And really, instead of looking at the paper and the sheet of, okay, here's all the steps, is really opening my heart and listening and letting God work through me and be that channel. I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to have it all figured out. God's going to guide you every step of the way. If you get out of the way, you hand your ego over and you let yourself be with it and sit with it and allow yourself to be a channel. And I think that is one of the biggest, most positive, impactful changes that I have gone through within Medical Intuitive, because I went from being like, I don't know why I'm here, but I know I'm supposed to be here, to like, okay, I really am intuitive. I really can do this. And instead of it being a fear that holds me back, it's like I shift that into an excitement of, I get to do this and I get to try and I get to be wrong and that's okay. But it's not a defeating mechanism anymore. It's an excitement of, okay, what's on the agenda for today?
You just brought up two such incredible points that I'm so grateful to you for bringing up. And the first is that giftedness as a psychic child is like there's no books about how the trauma around that even affects us because it's still so accepted that these gifts aren't real, that the gaslighting is just invisible to most people. But if you're a psychic and intuitive child, which I'd say around 95% of children are born that way, right? Um,
Mhm.
and you just are constantly told you can't know that, this isn't real, that's just your imagination. By the time you get to 7, 8 years old, you've shut down your gifts, right? Or if you have people for religious reasons be afraid of your gifts, you don't see, yeah, which is really common. I remember seeing two of my great grandmothers, they were always like best friends and they passed away together, which is kind of sweet, the way soulmates kind of do. And we lived in Scotland and they lived in Brazil. And I was 4 years old, maybe five. And my mom had heard 24 hours before that they'd passed away, but she hadn't told anybody. And we were driving back from a swimming class, and I saw them standing in the middle of the roundabout waving at me, like one in like a lilac dress and one in like a yellow dress, and both of them were like waving and like, like we're okay. And I was like, Mom, I was so excited. I was like, they're here, you know, in the way that like a little kid is like in Harry Potter. This like we get to see family, right? And my mom just like slammed on the brakes and the car went, and I saw like my white knuckling in the back going, oh, what did I do? So many people get similar reactions, right, from their parents of this is for some, this is dangerous, this is not right, you shouldn't know this, right? Um, so we really do shut it down and we forget that it was even there to begin with. Um, so it's huge that it gets to open up. Most people, we talk about gifted children and the syndrome and the archetype, but we're talking about, whether or not we got to pursue singing or music or, mathematics. We're not talking about our own connection with God.
Oh, oh, yes. I have chills all over my body right now.
So that was a big thing that giving us, well, that space, the medic giving us permission to work through this together was a huge thing. And I didn't expect it to come through, but it came through so strong because we were working on the inner child stuff, right? That we never had a space to even practice. And we were kind of like being like, why can't I read and write? Why doesn't my intuition work? And it's like, well, you had like 10 years of people teaching you how to read and write without ever questioning your ability to read and write. And you haven't had one day of people not questioning your psychic gifts or a chance to practice, right?
For real. For real. That is, I mean, I'm still working through the layers. I'm still working through the layers of the echoes of the old identity. And, my soul knows. I mean, I would not be here today with you right now across the screen having this conversation if at some deep cellular level I knew. And I think many of you that are watching this right now that are really questioning, is this for me? If you're feeling that, then the answer is yes. All you need is courage, compassion, and curiosity. That's it. And you can move forward into anything. It's going to scare the shit out of you. It's supposed to.
Oh,
It's
that's
supposed to.
well, that's the other thing that I was going to touch on that you brought up is that it's not like the business world. Don't get me wrong, you can make a lot of money from being a medical intuitive, and that's an important part of the healing as well, is being able to be honored for your gift in a financial way, right? Um, but when it comes to the business world, nobody's questioning whether or not people are capable of making money. That's been demonstrated and it's being demonstrated all the time. But the idea that we can dissolve disease, we're still like on the cutting edge. We're still on the sidelines of what human mind is being able to accept. We're kind of like where the law of attraction was 20, 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah,
right? And people were like, is this for real? Do these spiritual laws of the universe actually work? Whereas with the financial side, it's kind of sped up. With most people like left the health over there because there were such strong warning shots across the bow of do not mess with this. Just look at what happened to people like Barbara O'Neill or um, you
I
know,
know.
Right? So we had this very strong warning shot from pharmaceutical companies, from the powers that be, that were like, you do not get to change this belief system. Go into like private businesses, go and do your own thing. And I'm getting goosebumps as I say that, but do
I
not go into
chills.
this space. Right? And I think it really shut down a lot of people from going into the health space in our parents' generation. It was there. You could see it in Louise Hay's work. You could see it in a lot of other people's work, that it was coming through of like, we can dissolve this. It is just a thought. It is just an energy. And it got shut down so hard, kind of like when JF Kennedy got shot, with the idea of like egalitarian, like if you want this, you're going to have to be willing to kill for this. And then we're kind of just starting to dissolve enough, I think, of the witch wound, of the medicine wounds, of the war wounds, that we're coming back to this space of going, no, we're going to reclaim our health, and we're going to stand in the light in this space too. And it's not just the financial space that gets to be inhabited by light beings or by that divine energy. It is the health space, right? And we're taking it back. If you guys don't like it, you can have a conversation. No one's gonna, we're not doing no violence over here, but seriously, there's a conversation that's going to happen, the likes of which the world has never seen. And you can see it starting to like boom out, because you can see the Barbara O'Neills, you can see the somatic practitioners, you can see people coming through going, hey, this is for real, right? It's not a million supplements. Unless you address the heart, the mind, the soul, unless you address the 7 levels of transformation, this thing isn't going away, right? So it was fun.
Your whole aura just exploded around this truth.
Happy, happy place.
It's yeah, like what, what? I come from a medical family. My dad is a doctor, and my uncle's a doctor. My grandma was a nurse. There's a lot of there's generations of medical in my family. And when I went to college, I pursued psychology. I thought, I want to be a therapist. And then I got through almost my fourth year of psychology, and I was like, this is awful. Like I have to write prescription drugs for people. You know what I mean? Like this just feels, not saying that there's anything wrong with prescription drugs, or, your allopathic medicine. There's nothing wrong with that. As medical intuitives, we're not trying to say, oh, this is the only way, and you have, no, that is not it. We there's an integration piece for every single part of us to work together, and that's what we do. We work in tandem. We work together with those systems to provide a holistic view of health, just like you're talking about. We're not just dealing with symptoms and placating those. We're helping you get to the root of the cause, because the body, I learned this, and this was one of the most profound meditations inside of MIT, was the body whispering meditation. And guys, you go through so many exercise. Like if you think you're going to get out of something, you're not. So just be prepared. um Talking, like I had never thought, oh, I can talk to my body, I can talk to the cells. Like the conversation there was so awkward at first, because it was like, oh, we're doing this. And so it's a practice that I've had to do within talking to my body and listening, because I've been so used to
Yeah.
not listening to her, and really having that conversation. So it's so transformative to me, and just cutting edge, like you said, getting to the root of that, and integrating that into modern medicine is just,
It's so
whew.
hard. It's so hard to embody that though, even with my own kids, because the world is so not set up for people that listen to their bodies, right? The world is set up in that
Yes.
industrial revolution machine. And this idea that you need sunlight, you need play, you need connection, you need community is so far from what is currently available in a mass level, right? Even at school, it's like sit down, be quiet, do your work. You're not allowed to go to the bathroom. Like you literally have to ignore your urge to go to the toilet. It's such a deep one that you can not only talk to, but you can listen to. And there's deep wisdom in there. And most people have an inauthentic relationship with their bodies. This is what just drives me mad, because one of the biggest blocks to people healing themselves are like, I did have the conversation with my body and it told me it was fine. And you're sitting there going, yeah, no. No. And you hear it with like these inauthentic conversations with the inner child as well. They're like, oh, my inner child was happy and skipping. And you're like, yeah, no, no, that's not your inner child. I don't know what you were talking to, but that was not your inner child, right? Because
Mhm.
it's so hard to be really present with what is there because we were taught, don't be present with what's there, especially if it's difficult, especially if it's pain. You know, we were taught to mask it really, really powerfully. And to be angry with it. Like if your child is crying, you tell it to stop crying, right? If your body is
Mhm.
crying, you give it a drug to shut it up. You don't sit
Mhm.
and listen and
Oh,
actually connect. So it's so deep that we're taught to do it even in therapy sessions. We're like hiding in case the person can't handle the pain that we're in. So it's the level of authenticity required to be present with your body's reality and your inner
mhm.
child's reality and your never mind the inner parent because that's opened up a whole other can of worms.
Oh my God.
Especially being a mom. I remember when as a kid, right? Because you're coming through this idea of like parents should know everything, and then you become one, you're like, oh dear.
Where's the manual? We didn't
I
get the
could,
manual. It's not updated.
I've never been more wrong about something in my life. Right? And then you're like, been doing this inner dialogue your whole life where you were like talking to your parent and getting angry at your parent and having no understanding of what was actually going on for them or who they actually were as a human being. And suddenly you're on the flip side of it and you're like, crap, no education, no help, no support, exhaustion, physical health problems from the birth as well, depletion, no community, no village. And you're like, and they're telling you to like ignore the inner parent and just focus on the inner child. And I'm like, well, who's going to raise the inner child if there's no healed parent, right? How do we get this wholeness moving? And it's like you think you've just figured out your inner child is whole, and then suddenly it's like, boom, here's the next archetype. Figure this out.
But that's the beauty of the container that you have is that there is hope to ground yourself and to move into a more evolved state with whatever it is. You know, you can always be a novice and move into a state that has this support, but you don't get there without the support, people.
No, you don't get that.
I've
But
tried,
the
okay?
other thing is the understanding that it's there. Like I think if you didn't come into medical intuitive, I have never been in another container that addresses the inner parent the way that we do. It's
Yeah.
all you're like it's supposed to like I don't know, you're supposed to create a new one. You're supposed to like get it to like kind of pamper the inner child, but there's no actual healing for the part of us that has been deeply hurt across lifetimes and archetypes inside the parent model, both mother and father, right? Um,
Mhm.
it's not there. So I think that's one of the things, one of the reasons I put so much into medical intuitive, like I said, nothing will be left undone, is because you need that progression. And if you miss those steps like math, right? You're wondering why this, I suppose, the hologram or that isn't collapsing, and it's because you haven't dealt with every piece.
Mhm.
And I remember reading Alberto Villaldo, who's a very well-known shaman. He's also a Hay House author, and he was really explaining how the Lakota tribe do the same thing. They deal with everything in the dream that they call it. Like everything in the dream gets questioned. And for me, this was like the only way to deal with everything in the dream, because in Western culture, even in our healing, it's still fragmented. We only want to deal with the child, or we only want to deal with the inner feminine. We don't want to deal with the whole. But how can we call it holistic if we're only, even in the dream, right? The image or the trauma, we're only dealing with parts of it.
Yes.
And then we're like, why is it not working? And it's because we're still keeping it all, and it needs to be returned to wholeness. It needs to, so it's not just that there's a hope for, it's that there's a necessity for, right? Like we need to be integrated and whole, and we can't do that and leave the parts of us that are the most important for our ability to grow and evolve and face challenges and feel supported out in the cold. Um,
Whew, amen. Amen.
having
Great,
fun
sister.
doing this.
I love it.
Okay, so last question. What would you say to somebody who's thinking about joining, and they're sitting there going, I'm not sure about the time, I'm not sure about the investment. What would you say to them?
You can create the time, you can create the resources. It's the trusting, the nudge, the niggle that's coming through. This is This is something that calls you to it. It's going to scare you. So if you're scared, that's normal. That's to be expected. There's a lot of growth that's waiting you. But I'm honestly shocked that you have it at the price you have it at. I like my mind is not like I can't quite wrap my head around it. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Like it's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Like I think just find the time, find the resources, and the rest will help you. This is the financial commitment that you have, or the energetic commitment is going to implode. I can't tell you how grateful I am every day when I wake up in the morning that I have had the opportunity that I have to meet people from all over the world who I still talk to on a regular basis, like me and like sunny Florida, USA, who has never gone outside the country, never done anything of that. Because of this online world, it's given me access to the most incredible people who have so many skill sets, who are willing to jump in a chat and answer your question and support you at the drop of a hat. Like it's invaluable. And if you're serious about moving forward in the next steps for you, this modality it encompasses everything. Like she said, this is a holistic container. So I would say go for it. Feel the fear and do it anyways. And maybe right now isn't the time for you, but for some of you who are listening and you feel that vibration in your heart right now, this is for you. So tell God to make a way, and I promise you that He will.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to put in all Kate's information underneath the video, guys. So if you're feeling pulled to work with her, to work on your nervous system, to transform your traumas, all her information is underneath. And same thing if you want to have a chat with me, the links to booking discovery calls and stuff's underneath the video. Thank you so much for being with us today. All of our love from me and Kate. Bye, guys.